Coming up next on the Breadwinning Mums.
And he said, never forget that your job is the same as mine. Our job is to help make the dreams of young men come true. It was the first time where I had really elevated the thought of like the true purpose of what I do above like the mechanics of the job, and really sort of elevated its purpose. And I've never ever forgotten that.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Breadwinning Mums podcast. This is a place where we debunk the myths of working mums, cheer each other on, and show the world that you can be a mum and still pursue excellence in your chosen area of expertise. David Joyce is the founder and lead advisor of Synapsing, performance and strategic advisor of Beautiful Game Group, a long-distance runner and a well-rounded family man. We spoke about the importance of sleep in high performance, choosing the buckets we prioritize in certain life phases, and the awareness of the trade-off that comes with each choice, and finding a higher purpose beyond the mechanics of what we do. Enjoy this conversation with David Joyce. David Joyce, welcome to the Breadwinning Mums podcast.
Hi, Jane. It's a pleasure to be here. Never in my wildest dreams did I think I'd be appearing on the Breadwinning Mums podcast. So this is
Breadwinning Mums and Dads, I should say. There you go.
I'm delighted to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, Dave, we met at AGSM, where we both studied the MBA out of the university, but also we've met in different types of settings. And I've had the pleasure of sitting in on one of your keynote, I should say, or your presentation about high performance, both as a student, but also as an observer during Patrick Sherry's famous class.
Yeah.
And you've gone on to do wonderful things as a professional. But before we go into all of that, I'm just going to start with a very simple question. David Joyce, who are you as a human?
As a human, okay. Well, so the role that the roles that I take most seriously are as a dad of Matilda, who's 8, and Rory, who's 4, 5 next week. As a husband to Kay, as a son to Carmel and Alan, as a brother, as a friend. Like I've got a friendship's really, really important to me. And then outside of that, I'm a runner. Who's nursing a bit of a niggle now, but I'm hoping to get over that because I've got a big race in South Africa in June, so I've got to get back on the road for that. I'm a baker, so I've baked all our bread for many years in our house. And those
Sourdough?
Typically, yeah.
Okay.
And
so you're a very patient baker.
Oh, well, I'm just a fairly well organised baker.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, look, that's about it. I'm someone that enjoys life and loves being outdoors. I'm not great indoors, although my work means that I spend quite a bit of it indoors. But yeah, look, I think that's probably how people would describe me at my funeral.
Okay, all right. That's a pretty well-rounded description of who you are as a human. What was the young David like?
Sport obsessed. Um,
Okay.
Yeah, it's really interesting actually, Jane, because you do hear of all sorts of your kids these days with anxieties and friendship group bust ups and all those sorts of things. I think the reality is all I wanted to do was play cricket for Australia and footy for Essendon Football Club, and that's kind of what I remember. Like I wanted to be like my dad, who was in the army. And I was pretty diligent at school, and but I existed for the weekends because that's when the cricket would be on telly or the footy would be on telly, and I would be playing both. So that's kind of me as young David, I think.
What attracted you the most towards those sports? Was it the group setting, the feeling of belonging to something bigger than yourself, or was it the actual activity itself, the sport itself?
Yeah, I love the activity. And you're largely a product of the people that you spend a lot of time with. And I had a couple of uncles who were very influential in my upbringing. That they were like my mum's side of the family. My dad's English. My mum's side of the family were Essendon Footy Club for generations, and so it was just a given that I was going to do that, and I wanted to impress them and do all those sorts of things, and I just loved it.
Yeah, awesome. And so, as a young child wanting to play for Essendon and play cricket for Australia, did you know that you would eventually work in sports as a grown-up?
Not as a child, no. Like I think so. My first completed degree was in physiotherapy, Jane, and that was and I kind of knew that like probably by I don't know, around about grade 10 or grade 11 that I sort of wanted to go down that route. I like the people side of things. I like the sports side of things. But I had no real conceptualization of how broad physiotherapy was. So I
Hmm.
just sort of recognized it from, sport or private practice. But um, so I went into that and it's probably from there that I wanted to work in sport. I probably subconsciously knew that I wasn't at the level to make it as a professional athlete. And so this provided me with an opportunity to still be involved, I think.
Yeah. Did you try to make it as a professional athlete?
Not really. Like if I was good enough, I would have just kept getting select. Like I did pretty well, I was sort of semi-pro, but nothing. Nothing at the level that I needed to be.
Yep.
So I think inherently I knew that, and maybe there was my parents steered me a little bit, but I probably knew that I was going to my career would evolve elsewhere other than being the man in the arena, so to speak.
Yep. Okay, awesome. And so after you finished your degree, your first degree in physiotherapy, you spent a couple of years working as a physiotherapist, both here and overseas.
Yep.
What was that like?
So it was great, and the thing that so I work in hospitals,
Mm,
and I guess that's probably where those people that have been to hospital will know that a physiotherapist is a really important part of the hospital architecture. So I did a lot of work in intensive care. I did a lot of work in spinal units, and I actually really enjoyed that. I love the high pace. I love the clinical decision making, and I love the the fact that it was really consequential, like I love that bit. Working in a team and, really stretching your brain to work out the best care for someone who is very, very, very sick. Um, but I think probably after a few, and I did a lot of work in burn units and, those sorts of like really really important parts of healthcare. Um, but then I think I was probably just continued to be drawn towards the sporting ecosystem. And when I went overseas to England, that's probably where I really started to break into that aspect and working in professional sport.
Excellent. And then you went on to do your master's in sports as well,
Yep,
in sports performance.
yep,
What
yeah.
was that like?
So I did a master's in sports physiotherapy, and then I did a master's in strength and conditioning. And so I was a good physio, Jane, but I was never a great physio. And some physios are really gifted with their hands, and they can tell you when this bone is half a degree rotated on that bone, and all those sorts of things. And I was never really that sort of physio. Like, I never really believed in that bit, and maybe because I wasn't good enough at it. My expertise was more in strength and load management and program design, and so I did my masters in sports physiotherapy. So I was what I was good at was um, diagnostics, like understanding what was wrong. The therapy side of things, there were people that were better at it than me. Um, but then I did a master's in strength and conditioning, and I think I was one of the first people in the world to sort of combine those two areas. And so what that gave me was an ability to speak different languages, or at least different dialects, and that proved to be a real performance enhancer. I
Mm,
was able to translate between two groups that can sometimes look at the same elephant and see very different things.
yep.
And then I guess my leadership journey started to grow from there. And I was still being clinical or still being in the gym, but I was running teams.
Mm,
And that took me around the world. It took me to a couple of Olympics. It took me to running sports science and sports medicine for Team China in the London Olympics. It took me working in the Premier League, professional rugby union, and then ultimately to the AFL, where I was performance director for one of the clubs in the AFL, which was kind of like returning home, really. As I said, I wanted to be play for
yeah.
the footy club, and I managed the program at the GWS Giants. And so by the time I was doing that stuff, I was less hands-on in the actual physiotherapy or strength and conditioning world, and much more, leading groups of people to do that and facilitating the environment to get excellence and high performance. And that's kind of how that's the broad narrative arc of my career. Uh,
Yeah. Hence the MBA, or did the MBA come before that?
No, so I'd always wanted, well, not always, but I'd long looked at doing an MBA, even back when I was in the UK. And then in 2019, I started doing it part-time. And I decided that in 2019, regardless of what happened in sport, it was going to be my last year. I think I was just at the stage, Jane, where I was probably, I don't know, I describe it as a bit of existential boredom, like I
Hmm.
was still being challenged, but
Hmm.
they were the same sorts of challenges that I'd seen for 20 years.
Yep.
And I suspect a lot of listeners or viewers to this pod will be able to identify with something like that.
Hmm.
Um, and so the MBA was good because, you start off doing accounting and, finance and things like that, of which I had no real background at all. Like my first tertiary education study was economics and commerce, but that was before physio, and that was, a million years ago, and I barely remembered what debits and credits were. And so that it forced me to be a real beginner again. And I find going from a 20% knowledge level to 85% knowledge, that hockey stick of
Yep.
learning, I find that to be exhilarating.
Hmm.
Um, it's kind of that last 10 to 15% of knowledge that, where that learning curve tapers off.
Yep. Yep.
Um, I find that less exhilarating. So that's why
Yeah.
I never. That's why I think my career is really broad, um, but not as deep as some. Like a PhD is not the right thing for me. An MBA is the right thing for me because it's broad and not so much deep.
Yeah.
And then at the end of 19, well, so halfway through 19, I decided that it was going to be my final year in athlete facing sport. Um, and I was either going to become performance director at Manchester City Football Club, or
Hmm.
I was going to do my MBA full time. And as it turns out, I came second in that race for Man City. So I did my MBA full time, and
Wow.
it was really good for me. It enabled me to um, take myself out of sports circulation and for people to forget about that version of me, Joycey with the whistle around his neck and those sorts of things. But I think more importantly, and I've only recognised this in retrospect, is that it enabled me to forget about that version of me.
Yeah.
And then whilst I was doing that in 2020, um, I just kept getting asked to do more and more strategy work from, the Australian Institute of Sport, from the British equivalent, and then outside of sport. And that's kind of the direction that the next phase or the next chapter of my career has headed. So now I run a strategy, insights, and coaching firm. And coaching is executive coaching. I coach head coaches in the NFL, the Premier League, but I also coach CEOs and people emerging into the ranks of sort of
The C-suites.
exactly.
Yep.
Um, and
What do you coach them of or for? High
um,
performance?
so no, not so much about being fitter, faster, stronger, but it's how to be a better insert role title. How to be a
Hmm.
better head coach, how to be a better chief executive, how to be a better CFO, how to be a better, whatever. Um,
Interesting.
and I coached, a lady who had a chain of curly hairdressing salons in America. Um,
Hmm.
and I jumped from her to a head coach in the NFL. And you think, well, they couldn't be more different. And in some ways, the industries couldn't be more different. But the reality is, the struggles they were facing were almost identical, which is, motivating staff and, all these other things that as humans we deal with.
Yep.
And that enables me to sort of sit across various different industries because I'm human specific, industry agnostic. So
Yep.
I just, I've never said that before. That's quite good. I might use that.
That is really good. Heard it first time here, guys.
And yeah, so that's kind of the role, and you become like leadership. High leadership is inherently a really lonely place,
Hmm.
and you don't get, well, often can be, and you often don't get full information, and you certainly don't get full candor. And it's my role to do that.
Do so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. All right. So, within your role now, coaching various people from various organizations, what are the common challenges that people face that you have been able to coach them through?
Yeah. So I mean, I imagine you could answer that question. Like it's a lot of it is um, composure under pressure. A lot of it is, executive behaviors. A lot of it's personal behaviors. These people are working high pressure jobs and then forget how to sleep properly or exercise, and so you just almost sometimes you act as a bit of an accountability partner.
Yep.
Um, but a lot of it is strategic thinking and, what happens if we do this? And what I really frame myself as is a decision-making coach. What are the effective processes that one requires to make a good decision?
Hmm.
And when you're looking at organizational strategy, that is a series of decisions and trade-offs. When you're looking at executive coaching, when you're looking at being a parent, a lot of it is coaching good decisions. If I
Hmm.
think about what I want for my kids, is to be, adventurous, brave, curious, calm, and kind. But I want them to be good decision makers.
Hmm.
So, in a nutshell, that's what I try and do.
How do you do that to an almost 5-year-old Rory? How do you
Uh,
distill that?
I mean, at that age, and I'm no expert in raising kids, but I think it is just about being on their level and getting a real sense of their connection to values and
Yep.
what their values are and
Yep.
what values that we would like them to display as well. And then you just try and connect any sort of decision to that.
Yeah. Interesting. I have a 10 and almost 8-year-old. The 10-year-old, we always have a struggle with iPad because at what stage is it too much and at what stage do you not allow them any contact with the current world?
Yeah,
And so I think the balance that I'm reaching right now with my son, Roger, is you have an hour each day to use the iPad. You put the timer on when you start using it, and then once it goes off, it goes back to
yeah,
its charging. And there were multiple times when he went over and I said, okay, that's over. You're not getting any tomorrow.
yeah,
And he went a little bit upset at that. And I said, okay, no more for the whole week.
yeah,
And then he got really upset. And I said, all you have to do is just do the right thing, go by this. These are the standards, these are the rules. And if you don't go over, you have to face the consequences. And, you know, fingers crossed it'll work for a couple of months and then see what happens when you reach the teenage years. But
yeah.
yeah,
But I mean,
it is all about.
it sounds like what you're coaching there is boundaries, accountability, consequences for
Hmm.
actions. They're all really good things to coach.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Tap on the back.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that you're a runner. What type of a runner are you, Dave?
And I'm a diesel, not a turbo.
Yeah,
So I run long, not fast.
same.
I'm in training for a an ultra marathon in South Africa at the moment. So that's um,
Which one?
comrades. So that's
Oh,
a 90-kilometer schlep from this year. It's from Durban to Pietermaritzburg. So it's very, very, very hilly, and I'm lucky that I live where I do in the Sutherland Shire of Sydney because it's almost like
quite hilly.
it's almost like
Yeah.
around here. So it's almost like the worst form of running because, well, for me anyway, because it's not as if it's contributing to the 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 finance of the house of the household.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it takes a long time, so it's probably the most selfish form of running, I think.
It is, but it's so like it's recharging, right? It's
Oh,
getting you
it's
back
cheaper
in.
than therapy, I always say.
Exactly. There you go. I started riding as well about 2 years ago. I did the UTA 100 last year and doing it
Amazing.
again next month. At the moment, I'm having struggles with my knees, and as someone who specialized in strength and conditioning, you would be able to relate to this. A lot of what we do is on autopilot. So in terms of running, it's so easy to just say I'm a runner, and so I run, right? But then there's other parts of running that you actually need to focus on: the strength,
Yeah.
conditioning, making sure that you're looking after those little ligaments, the softer parts. And so I wonder now, as your role as a coach and as a parent, are there any equivalent of the strength conditioning that we tend not to focus too much energy on that can give us the best value?
Yeah, wow. That's a connection that I haven't really drawn before, Jane. I look, you read about it all the time. The most important performance amplifier for just function as a human, whether it's as a parent or as a CEO, is sleep. Like that is the most important thing. It's the time when you recharge your batteries. It's the time when you consolidate your memories. It's the time when you really help with your learning, your emotional regulation, your physical recovery. It is just the most important thing. So that's kind of where I start. It's one of the very first questions I ask when I'm starting working with someone when I'm coaching them is, what are their sleep habits like? So I think also what it does is it allows you to have a little bit of temporal distance between, you know, a specific problem that you're facing and a reaction that you might have. Like I'm sure your mum would have said, sleep on it, and it's for very good reason. It just the world seems different after a sleep. So I don't I don't think I'm saying anything that's groundbreaking there. It's just common sense that unfortunately doesn't get followed as closely as what it could or what it should be.
Yeah, I think with the advent of technology as well, it really disrupts our sleep. We tend to forget about all of the sleep hygienes, right? Like no screen a few hours before bedtime. Go
Yeah,
and look at the sun when you wake up.
all that stuff.
So things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Sort of fairly 101 things. And in some ways it can feel a bit unsatisfying because it just seems so easy.
Simple. Yeah.
But unfortunately, well, not unfortunately. Fortunately, that's the reality.
Yeah. We're much more basic than we think.
I reckon. I reckon.
Yeah. Perfect. Throughout your career, both as a physiotherapist, as a strength conditioning expert, and now coach for various professionals, what one thing stood out as a life-changing moment?
Hmm, a life-changing moment. There's a couple of things that I describe in that sort of realm, Joan, from a professional perspective. One was so I was working in the Premier League, and the manager, um, so manager is like the head coach in soccer parlance, and he I he cornered me in the corridor one time and said, what do you do here? Which I thought was a really strange question because he was the one that recruited me to the club. I said, oh, I work with a team that gets athletes fitter, faster, stronger, all those sorts of things. He goes, no, but what's your job? What do you do? And I couldn't quite understand what he was driving at, And I said, oh, well, I we run rehab and we run all the fitness sessions and blah blah blah. He said, yeah, but what do you do? And I said, oh, gaffer. And so in England, the boss is often called gaffer. And I said, gaffer, I really don't know what you mean here. And he's always a little bit cerebral and left field anyway. Um, but I remember distinctly everything about the next bit, which was, I remember what I was wearing, I remember where I was standing, I remember, what it looked like outside. I remember everything. Sometimes in life
Yeah.
you get those moments that crystallize.
Mm.
Um, and and he said, never forget that your job is the same as mine. Our job is to um, help make the dreams of young men come true. And and it was the first time where I had really elevated the thought of like the true purpose of what I do um, above like the mechanics of the job and really
Yep.
sort of elevated its purpose.
Yep.
And I've never ever forgotten that. And it was a really instructive and seminal moment for me because um, I use that quite a bit as well. Like it is really helpful, when I'm coaching, when I'm doing strategy work, why are we really here?
Mm.
So you work, I work with portfolio managers in finance that manage billions of dollars, Jane, billions. And, you know, it is helpful for them to actually realize that what they're doing is that they are investing money on behalf of mums and dads that have worked, nurses and road sweepers and all these people that make our society go. They're investing their money so that they can have a good retirement. And that's a really important part, because if they lose that, bigger purpose and it becomes about, you know, um,
Returns, metrics.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, like it
Mm.
depersonalizes it, and that's nowhere near as impactful for them. And I
Mm.
think they can lose purpose and lose therefore satisfaction, and becomes about, how many zeros they've got in their bank account, which is a fairly hollow place to live.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing. It's very insightful. Okay, so this podcast is for busy working parents.
Uh-huh.
For high achieving parents like yourself, who are juggling various demands and multiple shifts, how could they sustainably perform in these various and equally demanding roles?
Yeah, I wouldn't describe myself as a high performing parent, but um,
High performing professional with kids in tow.
yeah, speak to the children, worry about that one. Look, like I'm quite fond of the notion that you can have it all, you just can't have it all at once, and
Yep.
and it does involve trade-offs.
Yep.
And so one of the exercises that I do with people that I coach is and you'd be familiar with this from your MBA, I'm sure, is having a balanced scorecard for your life
Hmm.
for each year. And so being really clear about what it is in your life you want to be able to achieve for this particular year. The way I structure it, Jane, is to say, okay, so I'll do this in January, let's just say. Um, it's now December 31st, you're having a barbecue with your next door neighbours, and they say, how was your year? And you go, it's been a really good year. And they say, oh, well, in what way? Well, how do you know? Um, what are the buckets that you really want to have achieved?
Field. Yep.
Phil, that's right there. Um, and like I think having multiple aspects of your character is really important here. It's not just finance. Um, Typically, for people, it will fall into, and I usually get people to select no fewer than three, no more than five buckets.
Mm.
But it will be something along the lines of professional growth, whatever, health, um, family or friends, community. So, what have you done outside of your own four walls? Um, and usually, it will be some sort of hobby or fun or something of that nature,
Mm.
event
Play.
or play, those sorts of things. Um, and if you do that up front, and then, periodically, every quarter, I do it with the people that I coach. You can see if you're on track or not.
Mm.
And it's not to say that if you select five things, it doesn't mean that they're equally as important. Like there are
Mm.
seasons where you go, professionally, this is where I need to concentrate here. But at least it's in front of you where your trade-off is.
You can see it. Yep.
Yeah, as opposed to getting to the end of your career and go, look how big my bank account is, but I've got three failed marriages and my health's terrible.
Mm.
Um, so being really aware of your trade-offs, I think, is a really important thing. And that's not to judge any trade-off. It's just so that you're making it with clear knowledge of that's what you're doing.
Yep. Interesting. I hear that a lot with working mums, but it's good to hear that, dads also are quite conscious of the trade-offs that they are facing, that they are choosing as well.
So I reckon working mums uh, probably do this better than most,
Mm.
because they know that you can't be absolutely everything to every person. So
Yep.
you've just got to go, well, my priority is this. And that's what, you know, I I teach this um, to businesses that I work with. It's just strategy. Like strategy is the art and science of saying no to good things so you can say yes to better things.
Mm.
And that's the hard bit is, there's so many things that you could be doing, but you do have to say no to some good things, and that's hard. That's really hard. But
Yep.
you're just making the call that this next thing is better. And that's where you're going to
Yep.
spend your marginal dollars or your marginal minutes.
Yep.
And that's kind of the approach that I try and take anyway.
Yeah, that's another good line, David. You're giving us plenty of nuggets now.
Oh,
Strategy is
this is
just
this is the
learning how to say no to good things
yeah,
so you can say yes to better things.
this is the greatest hits.
So, what's life like for you right now?
Oh, who knows? And that's the exciting thing, Jane, is that I genuinely don't know. Um, I I really like what I'm doing
Yep.
with my work. I'm active. I'm healthy. I'm a hands-on dad. Um, I'm not trying to retire to the Bahamas, which is good. Like it's never been part of the grand plan is to earn as much money as you can. We earn enough that we can pay the mortgage, and really what I want to be able to do is buy time.
Yep.
Um,
Or not wasted.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and be able to earn enough that I can say, I am going to on 3 days a week or 2 days a week do school pickup or
Yep.
whatever it is, rather than I've got to do more and more and more
Yep.
because I want to buy a better and better car like that. I'm I think I'm lucky that I've never been motivated by that bit.
Yeah.
I just want to, my rules for who I work with are pretty simple. It's got to, it's got to be something where I learn. It's got to be something that adds value to the world. It's got to be something where I feel like I can impact, and it's got to be with people that I enjoy being with.
Yep.
Um, like four fairly simple guidelines, but if any client comes to me and doesn't hit all four, then it's a really easy no for me.
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
as long as people keep coming with those sorts of things, uh,
Yep.
I'll keep going.
Yep. If there was one thing that your coaching clients that both Matilda and Rory would have when they're your age, if there was just one mentality or one perspective that everyone that you have touched on their lives have, what would that be?
Hmm. I don't know about one. Uh, I, I don't know is the answer, but maybe it's something about equanimity or composure under pressure. I think
Mm,
that's I think that's a really important thing, and being able to because that's so important, so you can think through complex situations, you can think through a crisis, you can think through things where there's a whole heap of information coming at you at once. The
yep.
the best people in life that I see in terms of high performance
Hmm.
athletes, coaches, CEOs in a crisis, those sorts of things, they're able to do that. And under pressure, the ones that don't make it are the ones that melt.
Yep.
So if life is always full of little bits of crisis,
Yep.
whatever it is, and being able to think your way through and be able to remain composed, I think is a really important skill.
Yep. And those were the skills that the MBA taught us, right? First month, I think. They were teaching us how to do box breathing, how to do meditation, how to just try to compose yourself during Alice, if you could remember.
Yeah, yeah. Look, I think they're really good tactics.
Yep.
Um, that are really helpful that I use with myself and I use with your kids and clients and those sorts of things. Um, but it's yeah, those things are necessary but not sufficient.
Hmm. What are the additional things that you recommend your coaching clients
Um,
or that
like
you do for yourself on a daily basis?
oh look, so much of it is being able to talk through things, and it's not a skill that everyone can get. Like I think that everyone can improve, but there are people that are just going to be better than others.
Yep.
Um, so I do a lot of work with well, not a lot of work. I work weekly on the phones as a volunteer for Lifeline. Um,
Oh, wow.
what what you hear are people in awful situations
Yep.
that have, for one reason or another, um, lost or significantly impaired their ability to think through things.
Mm.
Um, and so much of it is because they've lost a sense of connection to people, they've lost the ability to talk to people, or they've lost people to talk to. And so that's a really important scaffolding around people,
Yep.
to get outside of our own heads. One of my favorite sayings is something that my dad taught me years and years and years ago, which was, you can't read the label from inside the bottle. And
Yep.
that's such an important thing for us as humans, particularly at the pointy end and the pointy end can be, because you're doing this huge merger or acquisition, or because your kid won't go to sleep at 3 in the morning, or whatever it um, is is having someone to speak to about it, and like that stuff just helps so much. Um,
Yep.
so that's why loneliness is such a bad thing, is because you lose that.
Yeah. Interesting. I think I was listening to a podcast conversation between Simon Sinek and his guest, and they were highlighting the importance of just having someone in your life where they can say, "Hey, you've got stuff on your face," because
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, you don't have that um sounding board. And in a world where we're so hyper connected, ironically, we're so disconnected from each other and ourselves.
Yeah, that's right. And like one of the things that we're committed to with our kids is we want them to have um, really important non-parental adults in their life,
Hmm.
people that they can speak to that are grown up, um, but that they can air things that they wouldn't necessarily
Yep.
want to tell their parents.
Yep.
That's a really important thing for us.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. And so, how are you juggling your current professional lives and family lives? Are there any special rituals that you do as a family on a weekly basis?
Rituals. Yes, so um, my wife and I both prioritize exercise, so that like I'm out first thing in the morning. Kay's a rower, so she goes out first thing, but we just alternate the days that we do that. We always do school drop off. Um, um, Pancakes on Sunday is a bit of a ritual. We always say, what was the best thing about your day? Like it's almost the last thing that we say before bed. Um, just little idiosyncratic things that all families sort of do. But um, we're I really love cooking, and so we have people over for dinner. Like we've got a very active, entertaining household. People are always.
Oh, good.
And funnily enough, I was saying this to the kids last night. Was I want them to be able to, amongst other memories of their childhood, I'd love for them to remember there was always nice smells in the kitchen.
Yeah.
They'd be woken up with the smell of bread, or whatever it is that's cooking. Yeah, and I had that, and I'd love for them to have that as well.
Yeah. Nice. Solidifies good memory, childhood memory.
I well, I think so. Yeah,
Yeah.
I want them to have fun, adventure, all those sorts of things, and the smell of good food.
Yeah. Excellent. If you could give your younger self one advice, let's go back to that young David who is about to go to London for his first stint as a physiotherapist, knowing all of the wealth of knowledge that you know now and knowing everything about yourself. What one advice would you give that young David?
Um, I don't know. It's a funny question, that one, isn't it? Because um, it kind of well, you don't know what that one piece of advice would do.
Yeah, yeah.
um, and um, but I think probably what I would maybe advise younger David to do would be to just make sure that he was continuing to have fun and not take himself too seriously. Like, um, I worked really hard and it was great and it's got me to where I am and all those sorts of things. And so I don't regret that for one moment. Um, but when others were off gallivanting, I was out working. And there are parts of that where I look back and go, oh, I wish I had have gone to Mallorca with, my mates or whatever.
Fill
But
a different bucket. Yeah,
yeah, but I mean, it's not even a regret. It's just that's the
yeah,
trade-off.
exactly. Yeah.
Um, I probably wish I had have like I can speak Spanish to an okay degree, but I wish I had have like more heavily invested in learning another language earlier, I reckon.
Mhm.
Um, but it's one thing to give your younger self advice. The other, there is an assumption that the younger self would listen to it as well. So,
That's what Ben Prox said about himself as well, his younger self.
he's a great man.
Yeah.
He's a great man, is Benny. So he and I have bonded over many things, but one of which is long distance running.
Oh, there you go. There's something special about long distance runners. Just the
Nah,
sheer idiocy of it
yeah,
all. You know? Oh,
yeah,
you're another crazy.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Cool. All right. And one last question that I always ask all guests is, what is your power song?
My power song. Okay, so there's if I can give two, one for the longest time it was "Wolf Like Me" by TV on the Radio, which I think is one of the best workout songs ever
Hmm.
ever recorded. But the song that I've listened to most over the last 12 months, um, and funnily enough, I put Ben Pronk onto this as well, is "Go." um,
Yeah.
by
Yeah.
public service broadcasting, which
Yeah.
I love. I think it's a fantastic song if you're running quickly for a kilometer.
Yeah. Excellent. I did check that out actually. It is pretty cool.
Yeah,
Sends you on a rocket ship journey.
it's a ripper.
Yeah, awesome. All right. Well, David, Joyce, thank you so much for sharing part of your journey with us. As someone who has helped others, realize their dreams, I'm sure you continue to do the same for others right now, and hopefully it'll help other parents continue to realize their dreams as well.
I hope so. Thanks so much for having me, Joe.
Thanks, David. See you next time.
There you go.
This episode of The Breadwinning Mums was produced by me, Jane Lim, and our theme music was produced by Sam McNally. We recorded this episode on the lens of dark people who have passed their parenting story for generations. We pay our respects to the elders past and present and thank them for caring for country. Connect with us through LinkedIn or Instagram at Breadwinning Mums. Until next time.